Today, we're going to learn about the stress reducing conversation, which is one of my favorite strategies that I've learned as a certified Gottman therapist and learning the Gottman method of couples therapy. I have with me Sarah and James, who are going to role play a session with a couple learning how to do the stress reducing conversation. We always start out our sessions where I ask the members of the couple to share an appreciation with each other. So I'd like to ask Sarah and James if they would be willing to share one thing that each person thinks the other person did during the week that they feel was helpful for the relationship. Who would be willing to go first?
I'll go first.
Okay, go ahead, Sarah.
James, I really appreciate all of the times when I had to take a business call this week and you were willing to go into a different part of our house to make sure I could do that, even when it was inconvenient to you.
Oh, I was happy to do that.
That was great, Sarah. Now your turn, James.
I know we've switched to doing grocery deliveries lately for our family, and it just looks a lot different than how we normally do it. And you've been putting a lot of thought and effort into doing it to make sure that we just have proper food to have throughout the week, and you and I don't have to stress about it beyond just one day. And I just really appreciate the thought and effort that you put into that for our family. So thank you.
Thank you both. That was great. So Sarah and James, we're going to learn about the stress reducing conversation today. And this is something that really enhances a relationship because it's called a ritual of connection. It's something that you can count on doing each day, usually at the end of the day. Often people do it when they get home from work or when they're coming together around dinner time, where you talk about stress that's external to the relationship rather than something that happened between you. So people actually really enjoy the stress reducing conversation because it is the external stress. So it's less likely to bring about conflict or tension. In fact, it's the opposite. It helps you relax and feel more connected and become something that is like taking a nice deep breath at the end of the day with each other. So in the stress reducing conversation, there's a speaker and a listener. So one of you will go first as speaker and the other takes the role of listener. And what the speaker's job is to talk about your stress that's external to the relationship in as much detail as possible. And then what the listener's job is to really listen. And I'm going to teach you how to listen in this situation because it's a little different than what people might naturally do. So I hope you both have your washcloth with you, because we'll be talking about that in a minute and what the washcloth moment is in the stress reducing conversation. So the first thing I'd like you to remember as the listener that your goal is to seek understanding first, not problem solving or giving advice. And our tendency when someone talks to them about a stress is to want to help to solve it. So if somebody says, oh, I'm so stressed out because I have a meeting with my boss tomorrow and I feel really nervous about it, our tendency is to say, oh, well, why don't you do some deep breathing right before you go into the meeting? So you want to give a solution, something that's going to help the person reduce their stress. But I don't want you to do that. Instead, I want you to really seek to understand the feeling that the person's experiencing, what that stress is like for them. So you're going to show a lot of interest and ask questions if you need to have more understanding. And by showing interest, it means that you're not on your cell phone, you're not looking all around the room, you're not watching TV, you have eye contact with each other, you're looking directly at the other person, giving them your undivided attention. because you want them to feel like you are there for them and you are their ally in this very stressful situation. So your goal is to communicate understanding and also to communicate this feeling of solidarity, like we are going to be in this together. And if there's another person that's a challenge for your partner, side with your partner against this person that they feel at this moment is the enemy. And it's not really an enemy, but it just means somebody that this person is having a hard time with. So your partner needs to feel like you've got their back, you're in it with them, and you're going to help them no matter what. So you communicate that in a very understanding way. Now, sometimes in a long-term relationship where you know somebody really well, it may be difficult to do that. And that's where the washcloth comes in. So I'd like you to imagine that in moments where you want to say something that might not be the best in the stress reducing conversation, that you stuff the washcloth in your mouth. Now, a lot of people will say to me, can I stuff the washcloth in my partner's mouth? But no, you cannot do that. The washcloth needs to go in your mouth, figuratively, not literally, so that when you might be tempted to say to your partner who says, my boss just got mad at me because I showed up 10 minutes late for work today, and I just don't get it. I mean, what difference does 10 minutes make? Why should he be so mad at me for 10 little minutes? Where you might be tempted to say, well, you're always late. You're always late for me. It really affects our relationship. I can't stand it when you're late. You don't do that. Even though you might be tempted to do it, you might identify with the same issue, but you cannot say that because that would be considered siding with the enemy. That is a washcloth moment. That's where you imagine that you're sticking the washcloth in your mouth. The other thing that you want to do as the listener is to communicate interest in the feelings your partner is experiencing. So if your partner sounds scared, you ask them to talk more about the fear. And you might say something like, yeah, I can see why you're scared about that. Or if your partner sounds frustrated, you can say something like, oh yeah, that's awful. I see why you're frustrated. I'd be frustrated too. And your partner says, I cannot stand having to interact with my colleague at work. You can say, yeah, I get that. I mean, that kind of person drives me crazy as well. So you're really trying to validate your partner's perspective and say something that communicates that really clearly. And then when you're finished, you ask your partner, do you feel understood? If your partner says yes, then you can say, would you like some advice or problem solving? Most of the time, people do not want advice or problem solving. They just want a chance to vent their feelings. But if your partner says yes, then you're welcome to give some advice at that point. Now, when you ask your partner, do you feel understood? If your partner says no, then you ask further questions. You really try to understand at another level. Maybe you missed something. You ask them to tell again what it is that their stress is, and you work hard at understanding all over again. Then once more, you ask, do you feel understood? And then when your partner says yes, you can ask, would you like some advice or problem solving? Partner says yes or no, and then you're finished. And after that's done, then you switch, and then it's the other person's turn. Do you have any questions about that?
I don't think so.
No.
Not so far.
Okay, well, let's give it a try.
Something hard did happen today, and that is that I was getting ready for work and somehow just got behind. I had something happen with our dog and I just got delayed and I ended up leaving late, which caused me to feel really stressed out because I was supposed to get to the office at a certain time. Ended up speeding a little bit and actually got pulled over, got a ticket. And this is our first chance to talk about this since it happened. So, and it was really upsetting, just just having the stress of getting ready to go and then leaving late and then driving and trying to get to the office and then getting a ticket on top of all of that, which is really, always a stressful experience in the first place. It was a terrible start to the morning, and it was hard to recover from it as I had to go into a meeting. And so it was just, I still feel kind of stressed out after all of that. And just kind of embarrassed that I sped and got a ticket, and I was kind of nervous to tell you about it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand. I would feel really stressed out in that situation too. That doesn't sound like it was a pleasant experience. I'm sorry that you had to deal with that this morning. Do you want to tell me more about how that made you feel, or how you felt and been able to process it throughout the day?
Yeah, I think that, it's just been hard because I feel like there's always something that comes up in the morning that ends up making me late, and maybe I just need to plan better. I don't know, but I just really don't like that feeling of pressure to get somewhere, not having enough time to do it, and so yeah.
Well, do you think you just wake up a little bit earlier, or?
James, I'm going to interrupt you for just a second. You did a great job with your first response to Sarah. Really showed a lot of interest and wanting to understand her better, and validated some of her feeling by saying you could see why she'd feel that way. But now what I'm hearing you do is move to problem solving. And it's really tempting to move to problem solving really quickly, but I'd like you to just stay with her and understand more of her feelings about this first. So see if you can ask her a few more questions and really communicate that you've got her back and that you're here for her.
I'm sorry that you've been having these stressful mornings. How long has that been going on for?
I feel like it's probably just started over the past month or so. I just feel like I've had, I don't know exactly what changed, but I've just had less time. And it's not every day, but the little things just happen. So with taking our dog out, and if she creates an issue on our walk, or I'd get behind taking her out, and yeah.
You feel understood?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, would you be open to any sort of problem solving, or?
Yes.
Well, do you have any ideas?
Well, I could wake up earlier. That's definitely a potential, like you said earlier. But those extra 10 minutes of sleep makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Can I suggest something? Okay. Well, it sounds like the dog's been giving you a lot of issues. I have a little bit more flexibility in my mornings. Would it be helpful if I were to possibly deal with the dog in the morning and be the one to take it out? Would that kind of help give you a little bit more time in the morning?
Yeah, that would make a huge difference, actually, if you're able to do that.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
Yeah, that was really nicely done. And you just did something I forgot to mention, is that when your partner is sharing the stress in their lives, if you want to give a little hug or show a little bit of affection, sometimes that's really helpful too. So that was great that you just did that, James. And one nice way to close that part of the conversation is to say, anytime you want to talk to me about this, I'll be here for you. We can discuss this anytime. So that was really well done. So let's switch now. And this time, James will be the speaker and Sarah will be the listener.
Here's something that happened kind of recently. Um, so last week, my boss came to me with this project. This was on Monday, and he said, "Hey, by next Monday, we need to put together this thing for a client." And so I had really shuffled things around so that I could prioritize my other work at the beginning of the week, and then focus on that my entire second half of the week to have it ready by the next Monday. And the end of that same day, he came to me and he said, "Hey, we actually need this done by tomorrow morning." And I obviously was incredibly stressed out. I was thinking that I had a ton more time to get this done. I was working on other things, and hadn't even started thinking about this next project really, because I was like, okay, I can focus on that later. And I ended up having to be be at the office until 9:30, 10 o'clock, and I wasn't able to fall asleep. It just totally threw off the rest of my week, and I don't even know if I did my best work. And so that was a really frustrating and stressful experience for me. And I felt like my boss just, I don't know, I just kind of felt like I was, hung out to dry, and everything was just put on my plate as if it was fully my responsibility now to like act on the fly, because I don't know, I felt like it was just poor communication on coming from above as to what the timeline was going to be, and what the expectations for me were. And so it was just, it was frustrating, it was disappointing. I was really looking forward to spending a good amount of time on this project rather than a few like rushed hours. And so I just really had wished that the situation had gone differently.
That makes complete sense. I think I would have felt the same way. And I can't imagine how hard it would have been to have to work that late and just deal with the stress and pressure of having to get the project done at the last minute like that. What else did it make you feel, or that's a good question.
That was good, Sarah. I mean, you're going along exactly the way you need to, of trying to think of questions to understand James at a deeper level. Say something like, "Oh, that would be terrible," or "That's awful," or "That's so frustrating," and anything like that is really supportive. So why don't you give that a try? See how that works.
I don't need to ask a question right away, in other words.
No, I mean, sometimes just saying, "Oh, your boss sounds like a real terrible boss," or "I'd hate to have a boss like that." Something like that can be very validating.
It sounds really hard to have a boss that wouldn't be more considerate of what you had to go through in that situation.
Yeah, it was. And I know, when I have to work late, I feel guilty because it just puts all of the other house stuff on your plate, and I just kind of end up spiraling, stressing about work and stressing about coming home and feeling like you're being overburdened. And so it was kind of just this full whirlwind of like stress. And I don't know, in turn, I feel like I've just kind of shut down this last week and not been as communicative with you because of maybe some of the guilt that I felt as well. So
I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'm sorry that you had to keep that inside for a lot of the week too. I wish that we'd been able to talk about it sooner, so that you wouldn't have to feel that for as long.
And Sarah, give James a real sense that you have his back, and you're in this with him, and you'll listen anytime he wants to talk about this.
I'm in this with you. But no, I'm here for you anytime that something like this comes up or anything is stressing you out. And I just want you to know that I can be somebody that you can lean on and rely on when you feel this way, and you don't have to feel nervous about putting extra burden on me, because I know that it's kind of out of your hands. And I just want to be someone that you can lean on anytime. Do you feel understood and like you've been heard?
Yeah, I really appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Now ask James if he would like some advice or to do some problem solving.
Would you like some advice or to do some problem solving?
Yeah, I mean, I guess how do you think? Uh, I don't know. How do you think that we could move forward and do better in this situation next time, or I could do better in this situation next time?
Well, if you're open to telling me right after it happens, maybe we can work through it and you'll just have an outlet to talk about. And that way you won't be, I know that you mentioned that you were carrying around these feelings for a few days of shame about, leaving me having to handle everything by myself that night. And so I don't know if something would make you feel more safe to say it sooner to me, or what do you feel would be helpful so that you'd feel that you could be more open right after this kind of thing happens, if it does again?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe just doing stuff more like this. I mean, just being able to talk like this feels good being able to talk like this. So maybe we just need to prioritize doing stuff like this more often and kind of putting ourselves out there together. So if we're able to do that, I think that, I think that would be great.
Yeah, just like making time to actually have these conversations at the end of every day. Yeah. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I hear your dog. Speaking of the dog that you were mentioning earlier.
Always being difficult.
Well, thank you both. You did a really nice job with that. And I would encourage you to practice it every day, or at least 5 times a week. It only takes about 20 minutes out of a day, but it really, really helps decrease stress. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.